And it was to the point of death. Think about this. If you have a child or a family member, a young one, who gets sick, ill, the first thing you're going to do is begin to pray. You're going to pray for healing. You're going to pray for God's compassion. You're going to even pray for understanding of why you're going through this. We see recently a lot of young people in our general area have accidents, get injured, some serious, to the extent they're still in ICU recuperating. We see these things happen all the time. And people begin to ask the question of why. Or why don't you heal this person, Lord? Why don't you correct this mistake? And you can go through a whole plethora of doubt, a whole lot of misunderstanding of what's happening. It's easy to say this is part of life, but it is true. And there's that fear factor that we have in our life of the unknown. Why is God not responding? Now, the story today is not really talking about if you do things this way, here's what's going to happen. That's not what I'm saying. The heart of this sermon today is about love. Your love for God. So look what it says here. In verse 5 of Matthew chapter 8, and when Jesus was entered into Capernaum, there came to him a centurion beseeching him. By that I mean he was seeking him out. In those days, wherever Jesus went, he was followed by a mob of people. Very few people could get close to him except somebody with authority. So he got to him, the centurion. And guys got there and said, Lord, my servant lieth at home sick of the palsy, grievously tormented. This is a serious matter. As busy as Jesus is in other things, Gaius says, I have a family. You have to understand, he was raised to believe in pagan gods. He was raised to pray to these pagan gods. But he understood something that perhaps a lot of even Christians misunderstand. You go to the authority figure, and he knew where to go. And Jesus said unto him, I will come, and look at this, very important, I will come and heal him. All these Jewish people are going through sufferings. They're oppressed by the Roman army, even by their own religious leaders. Jesus says to somebody perceived as an enemy, I will come and answer your prayer. You have to know that can be galling. It can have a negative effect on you to think that, why is he healing them and not me? There's that jealousy perhaps that sets in. When we say, why is God answering this prayer and not mine? And I bring this up because it goes back to love. The centurion answered, and I love this statement, said, Lord, I'm not worthy that thou shouldest come under my roof, but speak the word only, and my servant shall be healed. What people thought back then, in order for somebody to be healed, in this case, Jesus would have to go to that person and touch them. You cannot be healed unless you had a physical touch of Jesus. But look what he says here. Two things. Number one, I'm not worthy for you to step foot. This is a Roman leader who is feared by the crowd, feared by the people, respected by his own soldiers, admired by some of his own people, has money, has power, have authority. He says, I'm not worthy. He recognized who Jesus was. He said, all you got to do is speak it, and it will happen. I mentioned the show The Chosen, this particular episode, where a guy approaches Jesus. He walks in, a tough-looking guy. And he says this to them, and Jesus' disciples are standing around there. They're looking like, hey. They have this confused look. But look what Jesus says. This is where the love comes in. And it goes on, verse 9. For I am a man under authority, having soldiers under me. And I say to this man, go, and he goeth, and to another, come, and he cometh. And to my servant, do this, and he doth that. In other words, whatever I say, people do. Here's what Jesus said. Verily I say unto you, I've not found so great a faith, no, not in Israel. You catching that? I've not found the faith that somebody says, all you got to do is say it. The love that Gaius, the respect, the admiration, The love he had for Jesus is pictured here in this interaction. You don't have to come here, Lord, because I'm not worthy. I know who you are. I'm not worthy. All you got to do is speak it, and it'll happen. Jesus then says, your faith is the greatest I've seen. And that's even talking to his disciples. In verse 11, now I say unto you, that many shall come from the east and west, and shall sit down with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, and in the kingdom of heaven. But the children of the kingdom shall be cast out into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Dear Lord, people say they believe, yet they will not commit. You can say you want to do something, but until you commit to it wholeheartedly. Let me ask you this. When I ask you to make a sandwich, do you just get one piece of bread or you get two? Well, obviously you want two. What kind of sandwich you want? Okay, it can be a peanut butter. One of my favorite, peanut butter and jelly. You got to put peanut butter and jelly. In other words, you can't go halfway at it. Or this. What if you say, I'm hungry, I want something to eat? And your mom says, all I have is oatmeal. Well, I don't want that. Well, you're really not hungry. My point is this. If you want to do something, you do it with all your heart and all your soul. Not this partial. Not halfway. If you commit to something, you commit to it wholeheartedly. And that's what he's saying here. Jesus looked at this, if you will, pagan worshiper, the enemy of the Jews, the slave owner, one who probably in his life had abused or even hurt Jews. Jesus looks at him. Look what he says. After all this faith in this man, go thy way, and as thou hast believed, so it be done. And that servant was healed instantaneously. Now you say, well, how does this deal with love? It's very important. Gaius had this love for his servant. Some say this servant was actually his son. He has this love for this person. He is willing to give up everything. Strip away all of his strength, all of his authority. He could have sent his soldiers down to pick Jesus up and bring him to him. He went down to where the enemy, if you will, was. The Jews, the sinners. He went to them. And that is a picture of love. He opened himself up to ridicule. Doubt. He may have went by himself. Who knows? His life could have been in danger. He did it because he loved this person. But he also recognized where the ultimate healer is. And that's through Jesus. Now I'm going to read in Romans, starting in verse 9, going through verse 21. You don't have to turn there, but I want to read through this quickly. Let love, we talked about some of this already. Let love be without dissembling, abhor that which is evil, and cleave to that which is good. Be kindly affectionated one to another with brotherly love, in honor preferring one another. No slothful in business, fervent in spirit, serving the Lord, rejoicing in hope, patient in tribulation, continuing instant in prayer, distributing to the necessities of saints, given to hospitality. Bless them which persecute you. Bless and curse not. Rejoice with them that do rejoice, and weep with them that weep. Be of the same mind one toward another. Mind not high things, but condescend to men of low estate. Do not, or be not wise in your own conceits. Recompense to no man evil for evil. Provide things honest in the sight of all men. If it is much possible, life in you, live peaceably with all men. I want to pause there and say this. When it is much possible, there's people you try to help out. I'm not saying don't love them. It doesn't say love them, it says peace. So sometimes you just can't help somebody. You have to move on. This is like when Jesus says, when you go into these towns and you try to spread the gospel and they reject you, dust your feet off on the way out and leave. It's kind of the same thing here. Dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay. Who? Saith the Lord. Therefore, if thine enemy hunger, feed him. If he thirst, give him drink. For in doing so, you shall reap coals of fire on his head. Be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good. And I read this as a piggyback on this, in talking about the centurion guard. He was in charge with a lot of the negative things that had happened to the Jews. He is one of the ones that said, ordered perhaps beatings, shakedowns, trying to make people pay, make them do things, put them in jail. Remember the story of Zacchaeus? How the people despised him? They probably looked at Gaius, the centurion, the same way. They despised him. They didn't like him because of what he stood for. Not only the mean things he did to the Jews, but also the fact he represented a pagan nation, unbelievers. And what happened? Jesus healed his servant. Why does this have to do with love? Because, see, in both cases, Jesus understood something about love. The love of God is not just situated for certain people. It is for everybody. The old song we sang in Sunday school and Vacation Bible School, Jesus loves little children. All the little children of the world. Red, brown, yellow, black, and white. They are what? Precious in his sight. Jesus loves little children. And not just little children, but all people. We've come to a point in our society and perhaps in our church where we begin to say, God will only take care of these people and not these people. You have to look this way. You have to dress this way in order to come to our church. I don't mean our church in particular. There's something to be said, though, with decorum. There's something to be said with formality. But most importantly, when that takes the place of love, it is not worth it. You see, our job is to love people to heaven. Our job is to pray for people. Our job is to share with them. And not say, only because of this, I will do this for you. Look what Jesus did. What did he base his healing on? Who this man was? No. How he was dressed? No. Who his friends were? No. But based on what? His faith. The centurion was showing his love for God through his faith. All you got to do is speak it, Lord, and it'll happen. Because I'm not worthy of you to even come to my place. So think about this in your life. What have you done lately? Your love for somebody. More importantly, what have you done to show your love for Christ? A little over 2 months, almost 2 months ago, we celebrated Easter, the resurrection. What have you done since then? We celebrated on that Sunday. What have you done to celebrate Christ in your own personal life, but also to share it with others? I can't speak for you, but I know this. When you share the happiness that God has given you with other people, there's a peace that surpasses understanding that nobody will understand. It doesn't make you any better than anybody. It just means God gives you that comfort. Because God is showing his love for each and every one of us. Make no mistake about it, folks. No matter what problems you're going through now, what difficulties life is throwing at you, God still loves you. Don't ever forget that. Jesus is still there waiting for you. Perhaps you're a Christian and you've been born again, you've been baptized, you've been in this church, you've been praying for people, doing things. But maybe you come to a point in your life, you say, you know what, I need to recommit to Christ. Or maybe you're like, hey, you know what, I've fallen away. I haven't been as close to God lately. I need to recommit. That doesn't mean you walk forward. It means you have to talk to God. The neat thing about being a Christian, the only intermediary you have is in Jesus. You can talk to him directly. Whether you're in church, at home, no matter where you're at. I've heard stories of people speaking to Jesus in a foxhole, on an airplane, on a train, in a car going to work, at their occupation, in a mop closet. So Jesus is always there listening to us. Just like the centurion, he will show his love for us through our faith. Let's stand, please. Turn to page 307, Just As I Am. I often say I love this particular song, and I keep saying that just because Jesus takes us just as we are.